So, I'm sorry, guys. I clicked all the wrong buttons. It was a great time. Whoops. But we're back for Lottie's deep dive.
I am not prepared.
Well, be prepared.
Okay. I mean, I know this is my deep dive, but how did Uriel like that Lottie was just rambling? I mean, not that Uriel knows. How does Button feels about
If
Lottie just
Uriel
rambling?
if Uriel ever finds out, they will never trust Lottie again. In fact, they will probably start beginning to purposefully feed her misinformation.
Delightful.
Uriel probably should have
Beautiful.
told Lottie not to talk about it.
Uriel thought it was implied in, hey, you're starting a secret network. How about you secret network for me?
Lottie was panicking.
I can tell.
I can't wait to see what comes of that one.
Fine. Beth, channel your inner Beth. Everything's gonna be fine, guys.
Sure, the Sabat are back, apparently. Wonder what that casket was. Wonder why it was so
Nothing
important.
Fine.
All of the mysteries. What'd you say?
I was gonna say I had a whole Google Doc of questions to ask.
Well, we'll start with some easy ones. Where did you get the inspiration for Lottie?
Like how I do most of my characters. Well, I shouldn't say that. Because this is only my second character for VTM. So I open up the app and I just click random until I find something that I'm like, yeah, okay, I could kind of work with something like that. And then a stockbroker came up and I'm like, yeah, that's a dude, day or night, pretty much. It'll be fine. That'll work. And then I wanted her to have a sister, and then I just thought it was funnier and well, not really funnier, but just a little bit more impactful for her to be a twin, for them to have that, as twins normally do, not always, that such a tight knit connection that would be so easily broken in such a dark and twisted nightlife that is the world of darkness. Because who doesn't love a little trauma? And then I stumbled upon what was the name of that lineage? I have it here.
You don't have to reveal that if you don't want to. That is entirely up to
No,
you.
I wasn't. I just wanted to pull it up. And then I stumbled upon the lineage, and I was just like, yes, this just works so great. And then I made Lottie English, and everything just kind of fell into place after that. I feel like, although sometimes I feel like I'm still kind of stumbling through how Lottie is connecting with her.
Question about this game. Were you happy to see how the interactions with Lottie and Willow went?
I mean, honestly, I think it's fairly on point for how they are with, because Lottie she has been making so many decisions for the pair of them over the years, whether they were intentional decisions or just panic decisions, and like all the consequences just adding up, just wonderful to me. They were wonderful. I don't know if anybody else enjoyed it, but
I have a question piggybacking off of that, if you don't mind. Does Lottie? I I thought it was kind of interesting coming into this group and seeing a Ventru defer to a Ravnos. And your comment got me wondering, does Lottie avoid trying to take the reins with this coterie because she's afraid of the consequences that she's seen in other parts of her life?
I think it's partly that, and it's also the fact that um, one thing that has been, I don't want to say beat into her, but pretty much beat into her, through all of her grooming throughout the decades, is you respect your elders. Rufus is the oldest member in the coterie by a lot. She is just falling in line with him because that is what she was taught to do, despite the fact that she really does just want to be like, nope, this is all mine. So I think she's slowly in the process of being like, I could just be a shadow queen. I can pull strings from the background.
So for me, kind of going off of that, was it Rufus suggesting something of that nature for Lottie that kind of got her to thinking about it, or was she thinking about it beforehand?
She was kind of thinking about it beforehand because I did make her that way. But Rufus giving her that little extra push was like, yeah, okay, we can't wait around anymore. We can't trust not that we can't trust the Nos, but the Nos can't do it anymore. This is a good way for me to, gain power and influence in the kindred community. Let's go for it.
That's fair. And I have a bunch of questions. It's just I don't want to dominate this.
I'll fill in gaps where needed. I know obviously more about Lottie already, so I can fill in question gaps when needed, but you guys feel free to ask. There is one thing I wanted to ask, and that is, how does Lottie feel about, despite, well, two questions. How does Lottie feel about Willow's pro-Camarilla thoughts?
Lottie cannot wrap her mind around it. It confuses and befuddles her that Willow is okay with, playing the long game, especially with a clan like the Ventru where we want to lead. It is literally in our blood. It's okay with just taking her time.
Okay. And then, what was I forgot my question was. Oh no. Willow did some comparisons to Lottie's current life to her life in the Camarilla, and there was definitely some parallels there. How does Lottie feel about that?
Lottie is she knows that Willow is right. And she sees them as they are being pointed out to her, but she herself is not ready to face the parallels just yet, I don't think.
Okay. Opening the floor to you guys.
What made you as a player want to play a Ventru?
I think that was just the joke. I think, didn't Dengle say it would be funny to see me play a Ventru? And I was like, okay, I'll try to make a Ventru. So it was just kind of finding something that would work. And the stockbroker happened, and then the lineage happened, and it just all kind of just fell into place. I will admit, I sometimes feel less connected to Lottie than I do to Beth. But then I think about Lottie after the game, and I'm like, oh no, that worked more than I think it did. That think I did at that time. But
If you could remake Lottie, first still as a Ventrue, is there anything that you would change about her? The way you set her up?
um, I think I would have switched her disciplines a little bit. Given her, I mean, I like the dominate ones, but I think I would have given her more fortitude instead of dominate. And then also just slight differences in her skills and stuff. Nothing over drastic or anything, but I think overall she's fairly okay as a young Ventrue that wants to find her own place in the world.
Do you think she'll ever try and get out of Detroit? Do you
Maybe
think
at
she
some
wants to?
point, maybe at some point, like once she has a good information network going, which honestly will probably be a long, long process. She'll move on to another location to expand her information network.
Thoughts on the coterie?
So she really liked Debbie just because Debbie brought her in money, but now Debbie's gone. I mean, still has that money, but she's gone, and it was just always amusing to her to see how Debbie's eyes changed and stuff. Like that was always fascinating for her to be like, oh my gosh, your eyes are just, why do you look like a cat now? She's still getting to know Uriel. Um, I think that she and they could have a good working relationship, but she also just kind of screwed that all up, unbeknownst to her. But so that's fun. She doesn't know what to make of Willie J because he she expects him to know everything that was taught to her about the Camarilla and to have some of those ties yet, but he doesn't seem to emulate any of those. Like seems to be perfectly fine with the Thin Bloods, and while Lottie tries to pass it off as, yeah, you are what you are, it's fine, she does not like them. She is just trying to not think about them and what they are. With Rufus, I mean, he's the elder of the group. He deserves respect, whether it is earned or not. And he, especially after that sermon that she witnessed, she is very curious as to what he is teaching and why, and how it will all affect Detroit as a whole. The more that gets taught, the more that gets put out into the world.
Okay, so the follow-up question to that actually deals directly with the Thin Bloods and Rufus. How does she feel about him actually seeming to like the Thin Bloods? Specifically, Chris.
She thinks that you're keeping pets. Plain and simple. Because you bound him. She knows that you bound him. She knows what that looks like. So she's just like, oh, he has a pet. At least it's controlled.
And she's been there for a couple of his discussions about faith and religion and all that fun stuff. How does she feel about his mortal face versus his kindred face when it comes to what he likes to put on as the persona?
She thinks that he is playing a long con, the long game, because he does. He puts on that very loving, nurturing, mortal persona of just a concerned reverend, but knows from dealing with him as a kindred that's not quite the same. So she's interested to learn more about his two halves.
I, for one, am very, very interested to see how that goes and how she reacts to his parts and pieces. Because I promise you, it's not halves. It's a bit more than that.
Your shattered glass is pieced together.
He's not quite Malkavian, but
Close.
Speaking of being not clans, if you had to assign Lottie a different clan, what clan would you put her in?
Wonderful, wonderful question that I am not sure. I need to look up the clans. I don't have them all memorized.
Toreador or Ministry.
Seems like she could do well in the ministry, honestly.
I was just thinking
Yeah.
ministry too, just because of the whole like gathering information and that knowledge.
Yeah. Speaking of gathering information, sorry. But I have to know, what was her reasoning behind telling Valentina Uriel's questions?
It was literally just, I'm panicked, I'm panicked, I'm panicked. I need to keep talking to Valentina long enough that I'm not alone with Willow for as much. And then she just gave her the letters and told her to just go by. That she didn't need to tell Valentina any pure panic.
So, I'll interject here a little bit. What does Lottie think of at least the domain leaders that she has interacted with?
There's an air about Valentina that she finds suspicious. Valentina seems too nice to be a kindred, or too understanding. Like, she doesn't know why it is, how it is. It throws her off every time, but she's not sure if it's just because, if that's just like a thing because she's a woman, and Valentina seems to have a softer spot for women than she seems to have for men, or what it is, but she doesn't know how to not be on edge around Valentina.
I will interject a little bit here for Valentina. You did see tonight a little bit more of the disrespect she has for men when she straight up told her that she would not talk to Rufus about any of his plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's
yeah, like
you can see less
deep-seated
niceties
hatred
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Lottie's not 100% sure if that's like just a Rufus thing or an all men thing, but yeah, there's that hatred there.
Yeah, this is the first time probably in your interactions with her that it has very obviously come out. So I was interested to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, like she's not quite sure like why it is what it is, but she does notice that air of, ew, gross men, but she's not sure why, all the time. She hasn't really talked to Catherine much, or not Catherine, Charlotte much, but she seems to have a nice setup going there that Lottie can respect. King seems to not really pull punches. I mean, he doesn't want to do the typical large information network most Nosferatu do, which Lottie kind of finds interesting because, Camarilla teachings, that's all Nosferatu are good for, is for getting information, getting secrets. So she wants to learn more about why King does not want to do that. I, as a player, kind of want to make Lottie go see Ellie, find out why she was kicked out of the Camarilla. I'm not quite sure Lottie would actually do that, but like I said, I, as a player, I want to do that. I think that would be a very interesting, path to go down. With Katarzyna, she knows Katarzyna is old, and if she pisses her off, she will be dead before she can even say sorry. She is always very aware of how close she is to the plants while she is in Katarzyna's territory, because she does not want to accidentally kill a plant, and that be the thing that gets her killed, because killed one of Katarzyna's plants. Am I missing one? I feel like I'm missing one.
Cassidy?
Cassidy. Cassidy is sus as hell. And cannot be trusted. And I don't think Lottie knows about the ties to Cassidy and the Sabbat. But once she does, that's going to make her all the more suspicious of Terrence, because Terrence did guide her to Cassidy.
Okay. Any other major NPCs she has thoughts about? There's only been a handful that you've really re-met a few times over. There's Caitlin, T with a thin blood,
Mike
and Boria, and then Daedra. But I don't think she's really met Daedra a few times, more than once or twice.
I don't think so.
One of Charlotte's people.
Yeah, she was the one that did the ritual.
Yes.
And Lottie got out of there real fast because of the silver.
Yeah, she hasn't had many interactions with Daedra, but she's had interactions with the others.
I don't think she's personally talked to Mike very much, so he's a bit of an enigma to her. Boria to her kind of gives off the feeling of a loyal foot soldier. So let's not piss him off, because if we piss him off, we could piss Katarzyna off. She, with T, I don't think she knows about the possible Ventru aspects of her.
Lottie was not there for that.
No, yeah, I didn't think she was. She does have a small sense of pride with the situation and at the art park with the spray paint and kind of having the nasty little thin blood recognize her art. Just because, it's like, yeah, I don't have a stick up my ass. And who was the last one said? Or is that everybody?
I think that was everyone that Lottie has really talked to. What are your thoughts on the new coterie that you guys met? Or what are Lottie's thoughts on the new coterie? Doesn't necessarily have to be individual ones, but just on the overall.
She thinks they could do a better job naming themselves. Yeah, all the Buffy references is just funny. Funny to me, Cocia, but like Lottie's just like, that's not a name, but okay. She is hopeful that they can help her gather information, though.
Okay. Anyone else have questions?
Just to be annoying, what kind of motorcycle is Lottie getting?
A motorcycle for Lottie. Lottie would not get a motorcycle. She'd probably get like a Vespa or something.
Okay, so my biggest question: why a Borzoi?
Well, that you can thank Faye for. I was just trying to find. I was originally going to do a Greyhound just because they're always so cold, so she could crochet them little dog sweaters. And then they're also a slightly expensive breed, which I was honestly a little surprised about. But then whenever I was talking to Faye about expensive dog breeds, regal looking dogs, she suggested the Borzoi, which I think I just pronounced wrong again, but that doesn't matter. And I was like, yeah, no, that's long, silky. Yeah, we'll do that.
And how could you say no to that noodle nose?
But like, there's nothing behind those eyes at all.
No,
They're supposed
Traditionally.
to be an
Duncan is
intelligent
very
dog.
dumb.
According to the research I've done since then, they're actually supposed to be a highly intelligent dog. I don't know.
They definitely
They
have
look-
had empty vibes.
I'm a natural airhead. What do you want from me? Please.
Yeah, they're very intelligent when it comes to training, but not common sense or like being able to put two and two together.
Oh, look, a bee. Num, num, num.
I'm trying to think of other questions that might come up. I want to say I had one for like you, and I forgot what it was. Like not in Lottie's view, like yours. But how did you as a player feel about the interactions with Willow? Were you happy with how I portrayed her?
It was, yeah. I mean, it really fit through the situation because, I mean, let's face it, Lottie is quite self-absorbed. She thinks about herself first and foremost. Very self-gratifying. Yeah, she wasn't considering, at least not fully, her actions having consequences that would affect Willow.
So I would say above the table, Willow was not slated for a Ventrue embrace. She was going to kind of be traded off to pay off a boon to be someone else's embrace, and it would have been, oh, what was it? It probably would have either been, La Sombra or another more physically based clan, and not Ventrue or Toreador. Maybe Banu Hakim, but it's not like I had to have that information 100%. But it would have been more of one of the physically imposing clans.
Which would make sense since Willow is a very physically imposing person. Like, Lottie's barely 5 foot tall. Lottie's barely 5 foot tall. Willow, however, is 5'9". She has an athletic body. Like, they are almost polar opposites.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing is Lottie accidentally screwed over Terrence.
Whoopsie daisy.
Sounds like there's
How
going to be
awful.
consequences.
There
Yeah,
already
it's
have been a few.
There's no accident there.
You don't know if any of the ghouls got through. You don't know anything else. So basically, a little bit above the table here for you. Had you not followed after Willow, there would have been something else happening. So your sire, Lottie's sire, is got some fingers around.
Yeah, he's not seeing red or anything. It's fine.
Anyone else have more for her?
I don't.
Not that I can think of right now.
Yes? No?
Not that I can think of at the moment. I'm sure I'll think of them later.
I have one for all of you. Thoughts on the Sabbat coming back?
It's gonna
Their
be
grand
fun.
entrance here. What'd you say, Ned?
It's gonna be fun.
I feel like Rufus will not be as amicable this time when they're in the city. Mainly because of them.
Because of the coterie?
No, them and how they've shown up.
Ah.
He has to at least show something that, yeah, no, they're bad. I'll help you if you have issues and you ask.
Okay. But yeah, I was hoping that'd be a nice little fun surprise for you guys there.
You're welcome, everybody. I was happy to help.
So yeah, that'll be fun. Yep, definitely look up Sabbat and the second week of March if you're curious about why it's happening now, because it's a thing.
And for that, all of you are welcome. Because I brought it up.
That was absolutely Dangle's fault.
And then I was like, oh, this is a bad thing, isn't it? And Faye was like, yep, but it's great.
Yep. This was day 1. We have 6 more nights to get through after our singular games.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. I have health.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, I have
Okay.
some.
So, I hope you guys enjoyed this game.
Yes.
Cocia.
It was a blast.
Hopefully it
was not
wasn't too
prepared for it.
stressful
It
for
was
you.
a blast.
I know
No, it was
solo
good.
games can be a little imposing.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes sense for her such deep connection with her sister. So
I figured this would be a fantastic place to explore that, especially since she has been so in and out of it. And it was just kind of perfect timing for it in game-wise, and it was nice to be able to explore that element of it without needing to flop between other people.
it really was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought of one last little bitty closeout question, if you don't mind.
Have at it. What do we got?
Is Lottie concerned that she just traded Terrence for someone else?
A little bit. Lottie was honestly hoping that since they were twins and she can't be bonded, that Willow would also be bondable. But hearing that she's still bound, she's already worried. However, Valentina does seem to be the lesser of the two evils with Valentina and Terrence. She knows how awful Terrence is.
Okay. Would you like a little bit of above the table information on Willow and what I decided for her?
Yes, please. I don't know about anybody else, but yes, please.
So, you are unbondable. She has long bond.
I mean, the exact opposite, and it makes sense because she's
Yes.
been bondable or bonded for so long.
That seems to have been the theme you were going with for the two of you. So that is what I had decided to do. But that's also why the bonds...
It makes perfect sense.
Or no, not long bond, I'm sorry. That one that
The deep bond one.
Yeah, where it sticks
She's
harder
bonded
and
for
faster.
longer.
It's not long bond, it's that other one. But you only need like one taste of Vitae or whatever.
Yeah. That makes sense.
She gets super intense bonds. You get no bonds.
It would be bond slave if I recall correctly.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, that's and she doesn't have a whole lot of willpower. And you need willpower to fight against your commands given under the bond.
Of course.
So that's actually what she had tried to do with the whole please follow me. She just couldn't.
Right, of course.
So she did the best she could, but she rolled 1 willpower.
That's just life. Poor Willow.
But I believe that's everything. If there are more, we can kind of wrap them up on another deep dive. But thanks for joining us, guys. Watch out next week for Nenavar's solo game. That'll be fun. See some roses, some rosebush stuff going on. But have a good night. Thank you. And farewell.
Sweet dreams.
I'm going to click the right buttons this time.
Will you, though? Will you?
Welcome to the deep dive. You can see Cocia left us. She had an emergency that she had to go handle for tomorrow. So everything's good for her, but she was not able to stay with us. I have a list from buttons. She's getting me a list. And I'm sure Dengle has questions for Nenavar as well. So let's begin with one from buttons, since it's as good a place as any to start. What was the inspiration for William, and why Motown specifically?
Motown specifically because Detroit. That was the first thought in my head. Also, I just really wanted to play a Toreador and give that a shot.
How are you liking it so far?
More talking than I'm used to.
Okay.
It can be a little frustrating at times because I know William is supposed to be talkative, but sometimes I really have to push myself to do it.
Hopefully, it'll become easier with time for you.
Hopefully.
I know it took me a minute to get to this point.
Yeah. Getting used to a lot of talking is difficult sometimes.
Yes.
Did you have a question? Along the similar veins of character inspiration and creation.
Physically, was there any inspiration that you went off of, or was it just a this will be a funny look for him, because it is a little bit humorous, let's be honest here.
I looked up something and there was a guy with wavy black hair and a mustache, and I was like, yep, that's William.
Strikes me as very Bee Gees, yeah.
Yep.
And for those of you that don't know who that is, you're too young.
Yeah,
So,
I remember seeing Bee Gees with music videos in the 90s too.
we'll lead off with another one from Buttons. If you had to remake William, what would you do differently? Or would you do anything differently? And if so, what? Not clan-wise, just remake his sheet as is currently.
One thing I was kind of struggling with was I going to give him one wits or one intelligence, because I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to do.
That single dot, that single dot's a rough one to do. It's hard to figure out what to put it in.
But I decided to go with William has intelligence, he just doesn't know what to do with it.
Fair enough.
Now, in a similar vein, if William wasn't a Toreador, what would you want him to be?
Probably the Sombra.
That's a quite a big difference from a Toreador.
You know, physically, William is huge. So I believe I put down he's 6'6".
Yes, he is rather large, and it's comical to see him sitting in the van.
Yeah. Imagine he's trying to make himself smaller.
Which also is fitting because I gave him nothing in stealth, so he kind of just lumbers around and fails every stealth check.
He really does. He does not do well on them. Does not do well on them at all. The Lasombra thing, that's interesting. Interesting.
A bit.
What would potentially draw a Lasombra to him, do you think?
It's partially because how I wrote down William's backstory, because when he got embraced into the Toreadors, he was like really struggling. Because I know Faye's the only one who's been seeing William's backstory, but his show that got him into the embraced in the Toreadors was kind of a shit show, and he just got embraced because he was trying really hard to save it. And Sylvester saw something in him for that.
So it was a never give up attitude
Yes.
that got him embraced in the first place. Okay. Which kind of explains a couple things about like why he just says, screw it, let's try it.
Yeah. So, from Buttons, has William ever thought of siring Childer to help with his goal?
Specifically with the goal, no, but he has considered siring a few Childer. One of which being Lottie's sister.
I think the whole coterie was thinking about that one. So, disregarding Willow, is it any of the NPCs that you've come across in this game, or is it someone from the backstory? Not that you've come across many mortals, but...
The inkling of siring Dolly did pop in William's head tonight, but aside from that, I don't think no one jumps to mind.
Oh, well, you said he was considering a few people, so is it people from his backstory then?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I think I know the group you're talking about.
Now, similar vein, has he ever considered ghouling people to do that outside of the one that he already has? Or bonding them?
Yep, yes.
Figured as much. Does he have his eyes on anybody right now to do that with?
Not yet, now.
Okay.
Where would he like to pull from if he was going to do that? Like, what would he look for?
You would mainly look for people with an interest in animation and just kind of offer it up to them to kind of get them into his poll.
Okay. Detroit's not really a big place for animators, so we've got slim pickings there.
Yeah, but we do have the internet.
You do? Cool people off Discord.
And I mean, you do have the college.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a thing-ish, right?
Ooh, I like this one from Cocia that she just put up there. How do you feel about the differences between William and Stephen?
Can be a little difficult. I do feel like William has bled into Stephen a little bit, but I do feel like there's enough differences that I can keep them separated. But yeah, like mainly that William is supposed to be more experienced than Stephen is, considering that William's about 50 in kindred years.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a different change of pace between the two.
So I've kind of got a three-parter, and Cocia touched on actually two of the three. So let's go ahead and ask them. At times, it seems like William kind of just goes along with what Rufus says, and like isn't necessarily influenced, but definitely has that push from him. Is that intentional, or is that not so much?
Yeah, it's intentional. Because our original plan for the Coterie was that they were supposed to already have been traveling around for a while, so I kind of just kept that in mind with the interactions between William and Rufus. And also in William's backstory, he was a fairly church-going person, so he kind of fell off once he hit rock bottom. So he kind of defers to the Reverend as a kind of religious figure.
Okay. So to go along with that, because a while back we kind of talked about Rufus and his personal struggles a little bit. How does he feel about that side of him, and where he's like, you can believe, but X, Y, and Z? And then given the, I believe, beginning part of the Book of Nod,
He feels a little conflicted because it does slightly go against what he's believed in so far, but he is kindred now, so he kind of buys into it a little bit more than he would have as a mortal.
okay, and then directly going to the other side of the Book of Nod, and Thin Bloods. It's fairly obvious that Rufus likes them, and Lottie's already said that doesn't really enjoy them. How does William really feel about them?
He feels like they're kindred like any other. He's not going to turn away potential fans because some old nonsense about Thin Bloods being the end of the world.
Okay, that's fair.
I would kind of add on to this here. Charlotte's whole group, all of the roses that have been connected to her in one way, shape, or form, there isn't really any discrimination there. If one manages to get into their club, they're treated like a normal kindred and everything like that. So there isn't a mentality against them in that group. As long as they pay, they're good. So that wouldn't come through from there. As opposed to, say, like Valentina's group.
Right. So if there was an issue, it would probably come from Sylvester, I believe,
Yes.
is the sire's name.
Yeah, he is not a fan of them, but won't openly go against Charlotte and her views on them. Take that as you will. I like that one about Chris if you want to read that off, because I'm on Button's page right now.
So how does William feel about Chris? And does he feel like Chris is the pseudo replacement for him?
Yeah, he likes Chris. He does feel like he has plenty to learn and is happy to teach him.
Okay.
No, he doesn't have any feelings of being replaced by him.
Okay, good, because I personally wasn't trying to do that as Rufus. William has a very good use. He needs to stay around for a minute. Chris has a different use. He's less useful physically.
So here's one from Buttons. And I can kind of answer this one, but I wanted to touch on her question. She was asking what is his connection to Charlotte, and it the connection to Charlotte really comes from Sylvester there. Charlotte keeps a very close eye on Sylvester, so she's fairly up in his business about what he's doing. And he definitely talked to her prior to embracing William. So she has kept a distant eye on William's coming and goings in the world of Kindred. So that is that connection to Charlotte there.
Plus, she's a really good singer, and William likes that.
Yes. But that's why she knew who he was and why she... Everyone kind of had a connection with one of the power holders here, with one of theirs. That's why he had that one. Outside of, well, because of the Toreador thing, but it was because of Sylvester, and he's kind of an asshat, and Charlotte knows that.
So, what does William feel about the Coterie and their ambitions currently? Like Lottie with the information gathering information network, Rufus with his real estate investments, Yuri with, well, being a Tremere. Let's be honest here.
William's not really sure what to make of Uriel quite yet. He kind of expected Lottie to be a little more ambitious, but I mean, Detroit really needs a new information broker, and William is interested to see where Rufus will go with the school.
Okay. And outside of the YouTube animation thing, does William have any ambitions that he can share or you can share? Because obviously not everything is shareable at this given point in time.
William's main ambition is try and be remembered in music history, but I did talk to Faye about it, and I'm not sure if it's something that can be measured in game. So I may have to change. I'm not sure.
Overall, the ambition is okay. But I think he means more of like personal things that William wants done.
Yes. Whether it be like his own studio or his own label at this point, who knows?
William kind of also wants to create his own music venue. He may start trying to make a label out of it. I'll have to consider that part, but he definitely wants to go for his own concert hall.
Good to know.
Very good to know. We'll see where that goes. I have a feeling I know where it's going to go. Let's see. Kind of along the YouTube thing, Buttons had asked that William seems to be pretty picky about who he brings in for the YouTube channel. What does he look for in a prospective artist, other than being able to art?
So it's more of a men issue. Sometimes I just forget to start looking, but as for William, he'll probably mainly look for someone who's like down on their luck and try to bring them in. Just
Okay.
partially out of desperation. He knows you can use that against them.
You almost had some people and then use it against them, and nope.
Yeah, so William's probably not the best person.
I don't think any of us are really.
Well, speaking of being good people, I guess this partly was covered in another question. I know William doesn't necessarily know about the whole nodist thing in general, but Rufus is definitely leaning into that type of headspace a little bit more. How is William feeling about that?
He's not quite sure what to make of it. He knows that Revan's trying to help people, but he kind of understands that some parts of the book in that aren't that great.
And to be fair, Rev is taking the stance of it's just a story. There's no validity to it as of right now.
Verbally.
Yeah, verbally.
Here's one dealing with one of the earlier episodes. Why was William so reckless when dealing with the Niktuku? Does he feel like he has something to prove to the Coterie?
William was just feeling generous that night.
That's a mighty big generosity there to let someone feed directly from the veins without restraints.
He did tell Reverend Debbie to keep an eye on him, make sure he didn't go too overboard.
Yeah, he did. However, that was still a bit reckless.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something tells me that William was rather reckless in life as well. Speaking of, does he have any? Well, if you can say, does he have any living family that he keeps tabs on? If you can say.
His parents are alive and in Buffalo, New York. They are getting up there in age, though, so that's something to be concerned about. So I believe they're probably in their 80s right about now.
Sounds right.
That might be a problem.
Don't worry, just because I haven't touched on many of the issues that have been touched on in our other game doesn't mean they won't come up.
It's fine. I have a van.
Issues, what?
Road trip. Yeah. Road trip, it's fine.
Yeah. It'll be great. So, question more about this game. Well, no. I missed one from Buttons. Would William ever consider performing live at like a music festival or jam session or something like that?
He has already. He does open mic night every. I believe on one game I said that he went to go do that, but like I know I looked it up in like one place somewhere in Detroit does open mic nights on Fridays and he goes to perform every once in a while.
Okay. Did I miss it? Is there any from Cocia that needs to get hit? I hit most of buttons. I didn't want to keep scrolling back and forth, so.
Yeah, no, you're good. So, does William have ties with the cam?
No, I think I just had them built to be independent.
Okay. And Sylvester wouldn't have had any ties there either with Charlotte and her whole thing. So,
Right. He's not a direct child of her, but he is very close knit in her group.
right. So from Cocia, how does he feel about Lottie being fresh out of the cam? And does he really believe she's completely out?
He thinks she needs to get out of headspace and enjoy some freedom.
Not wrong. So, any others from her? Because Buttons is leading into this game's questions.
Nope. That's everything for Cocia.
Okay, so this is one of the last ones from Buttons. What were William's actual thoughts on being called expendable and participating in human trafficking?
William doesn't care about the human trafficking part. He's been kindred for a while and knows that's what Charlotte's been doing for a while, most likely. Because we've been there several times and she keeps people down there, so. And William's really annoyed about being called expendable.
You're welcome.
I want to build on that. What was William's thoughts on the whole Sylvester conversation?
He agrees that he's annoying. Is a nice way to put it.
Yeah, and the conversation he had with Sylvester?
About what I was expected. Maybe he was a little nicer than normal. Probably because he was happy about when finally making progress on his stuff.
Ooh, we saw the first sire tonight.
Yes, we did.
Is it ironic that it's Nen's character sire?
Maybe. I don't know.
I think that's the only one we've met in the other game, too. So Buttons had a question for me real fast that I'll answer because it goes along the human trafficking thing. Does Valentina know how Charlotte gets her stock, and what does she think about it if she does? No, Valentina absolutely does not know. Charlotte tries very much to hide this. Normally the merchandise gets dropped off in what looks like the vans that deal with like money and stuff like that. Like that's normally what comes with the merchandise when it's required. It's not required very often though. And yes, I brought in the circulatory system into our games. That is absolutely where Charlotte buys from.
Speaking of bringing things into games, what was William's reaction to a Toreador with vicissitude and possible ties to other organizations?
That's very weird to watch. And slightly disconcerting.
It's fine. He's not Volgear or anything. Just adjacent. To be fair, Faye's fault.
It is my fault. Mariana and Joseph Petter, I believe was the last name. Petter.
Yes.
The only pair of childhood that Charlotte has. Very interesting pair. They're twins. Not sure how often they will show up, but they will definitely be around.
They also strike me as a yin and yang type relationship.
Oh, yes.
So hopefully I did that to your liking. To all of your likings.
Fantastic. I had fun playing a Toreador. That was fun. What were William's thoughts on the twins?
They're annoying.
What was so annoying about them?
So many questions. I'm calling them expendable.
Again, you're welcome.
Oh, great. And basically calling him useless. Like, oh, that's all you can do?
I did
To
not
be
score
fair.
any points in Williams' combat abilities.
I mean, that's fine. We
Obviously,
don't
that's
use
not
them
coming
very
from
often.
me as a person. Separating that from in-game versus out-of-game. But, yeah. That was funny. Like, oh, you can talk to people? Well, too bad so can this whole clan.
Except for the one that doesn't talk to people. He just scares the shit out of people.
That's still talking to people. Or making them
Fair.
talk.
Yeah. Intimidation, coercion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What is William's thoughts on the coterie?
He likes the Reverend. He thinks he's pretty interesting. I had a lot of thoughts about Williams and the Reverend, but I'm blanking on them right now.
That's fine. We have touched on this already a little bit in the previous questions. So, if there was anything else with everyone that hasn't already been said.
Very much like I said, he does kind of view him as the leader. I mean, kind of obvious to everyone in the coterie that Reverend's the leader.
Yeah.
Let's see. Not sure what to think of Uriel. Slightly annoyed Debbie left.
Did he like Debbie?
A little bit. He thought she was fun for a gang girl. Like we said for Lottie, she could get out of the camera headspace and enjoy some freedom. And pretty much views him as an equal in terms of fashion and thinks she has a cute dog.
Okay. So what are his thoughts on some of the major NPCs he has been dealing with?
Like I said, thinks, like Charlotte, thinks she's a good singer and keeps a nice opera house. King's enjoyable. Could be a little more ambitious and really take charge with the Nosferatu. Doesn't really care for Cassidy. Thinks Katarzyna is scary. Is most likely going to be keeping away from Zimitsi territory from now on, unless asked to. I don't believe he's had any interaction with Valentina. Aside from giving him a dead job at one point.
Yeah, no, Valentina hasn't really been interacted with pretty much anyone outside of Lottie and the one time with Rufus.
And he's also taking Rufus's word on Ellie.
Beautiful. I think there was all of the ones. Oh, what's his thoughts on Deidre? There hasn't been a ton of interactions, but she's been around multiple times.
She thinks she's really knowledgeable and useful to have around.
Having a pocket having a pocket Tremere is handy sometimes.
Felt slightly bad about finding information on Natuku and forgetting to say something to her.
It's fine. Yeah, I think that's... I don't have any more questions. I don't think...
I have one more question. What keeps him in Detroit? As we've covered before, Detroit's not the best place in the world. So what's kept him there?
Depression.
I mean, that's fair.
Like I said, William was not in the best headspace when he got embraced, so he's kind of mostly kind of stayed into it, especially with Sylvester being his sire.
Yeah, Sylvester seems like a peach to deal with on a semi-regular basis, so I could see why depression kept him there. If he could move anywhere, does he have a specific place that he would move?
He would most likely start making his way towards LA. Because, like I said with William, he's kind of has a single-minded drive to succeed in the music industry.
That's fair. And then one last one, because music. What's his least favorite type of music?
Disco.
Well, good news. At least one other person in the coterie is willing to not play disco.
I can't wait for that to come up, because it will at some point. When you're least expecting it.
Because disco has been making a resurgence.
Yes.
That, and there's a Toreador clan issue where aesthetics, and if you're not in a place that you like,
That's
you take negatives.
actually what I wanted to ask. What would William consider to be an ugly place? Other than a disco thing. Because I don't feel like it's the standard Toreador answer for that.
Pretty much anywhere that's dirty and run down, piles of garbage everywhere.
Okay. Keep
So
that
you
in
mean,
mind
like,
then when you start rummaging around abandoned buildings and things like that.
I have been.
Okay.
And more than one
That was all
reason
I
why
had.
William's been failing every stealth check.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, I didn't have any more questions.
I don't either at this point.
Let me make sure I ran through all the buttons. You want to make sure we ran through all Cocia's? I don't remember how many she put up.
Yeah, we got all of Cocia's.
Okay. Yep, that was it. All right. Thanks for sticking around this deep dive for William. If you guys have questions for us about any of the NPCs, drop them in any comments in our Discord, anywhere, please. We would love to have questions, a list of questions. Just the handle and the question.
We will cover them, I promise you.
Yes. If you have questions about the world we are building, NPCs, anything like that, also drop them and we'll hit them at some point. For any game.
Yeah. Yes, because at some point we're going to be doing a Q&A somewhere. We just need cues before you can give A's.
Yes. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
How about that game, guys?
Cool, the archives are on fire.
Yep. Was this what you expected out of a game? Buttons.
Yes and no. I was hoping for shenanigans. I was not sure what flavor of shenaniganing they would be.
Oh, this is like tart cherry.
And the rest
I'll
of
take
you?
your word for it.
Expecting something like this?
Yep.
I knew it would have something to do with Tremere stuff. Beyond that,
Hopefully it was entertaining for everyone involved.
yes, there was one particular part that I have questions about.
Well, this
I'm
is
sure
our
there
deep dive
is.
time. Might as well start it. What's your question, Dengle?
So, what was the deal with the creepy dude that kept staring at you?
Gee, I don't
And-
know.
And called you D? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Gee, I don't know. What do you think, Storyteller? Should I answer that one?
Well, I think we should begin with Debbie. What was your inspiration for Debbie?
Funny you should ask, and it's a pity that Cocia is not here because I wanted to see her reaction, because it actually all started with Cocia and Beth's game over on in Life and Blood Atlanta. Check us out if you haven't. When we did Beth's episode, I played a human named Cheryl who wound up working for Beth under the Giovanni because things. And after that episode, we were talking about what would happen if the servers got like embraced or ghouled or whatever. And at some point we were throwing around, yeah, Cheryl would be like a Bruja, or maybe she'd be a great gangrel or something. And I thought, oh, that sounds kind of fun. Because there was just something about the paradigm of the sweet Southern woman flipping and turning into this just absolute beast when the moment comes. That was just kind of interesting to me. And so Debbie kind of sprang from that, combined with the fact that we already had a Toreador, a Ventru, and a Ravnos lined up for this game. Not a lot of muscle. So I thought, it might be a good idea to have a little bit of muscle around.
So, do you two have questions about Debbie? Spoilers, not the D that was referred to.
No,
That is
I
correct.
didn't think it was. So Debbie ghouled her sister, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was that in order to keep her safe, or was there?
Yes.
Figured as much, because Debbie seemed very much like a caregiver type. What was Debbie's specialty dish?
Was Debbie's specialty dish?
I'm picturing it as some kind of like mudslide pie or something like that.
Probably like a instincts telling me sugar cream pie.
she struck me more as the not as desserty type for specialty stuff.
She's definitely got her fingers in a little bit of stuff, and she doesn't do a whole lot of the desserty stuff. But because she doesn't do a whole lot of the desserty stuff, what she does do is like really good.
I don't necessarily have any questions for Debbie other than the final one, which I'll ask when everyone's done with Debbie.
What was Debbie's motivation to continue dealing with the Ravnos and the Gangrel, the Toreador and the Ventrue?
After a certain point, it was mostly to keep an eye on you guys, particularly Rufus. Debbie is very, very close to Mike, and by extension King, and because Rufus was getting so heavily involved in their business, she wanted to be close on hand to make sure he didn't take things too far. And then
Okay.
Lottie and William by proxy fell into that.
He would never take things too far.
Sure.
So my next question is, what is Debbie's take on Rufus and Chris?
Rufus and Chris?
Yeah. That relationship that was kind of Rufus accidentally doing.
She's torn about it because on one hand, she doesn't like that he was brought into this without really knowing what to expect from it. However, she respects Rufus in that he's done his best to change that, and even though he's kind of been using Chris, he's been using Chris responsibly and hasn't been putting him in a lot of like direct danger that she knows of. That she knows of.
So to follow that vein, what is her take on the whole like different sects and like thin bloods and the divide amongst everybody? Seeing as Gangrel.
To put it bluntly, she doesn't really get it. Well, she does, but she doesn't. Like, she understands the why practically, but she thinks that in the end they're kind of just superficial excuses for for kindred to be nasty to each other.
That's fair.
She doesn't care about sect as much as the quality of the individual.
Did you have something then?
Nope, Dengle stole all my questions.
I'm good at that.
Are you good for Debbie?
I mean, there's that last question, but I'm going to let you ask it.
Well, I don't know what your last question is, but more so mine was, I know we've talked privately and in our Discord, and I think you even put a TikTok on about it, about why you swapped out for Debbie into a Tremere, but maybe touching on that a little bit more, why did you end up feeling like Debbie wasn't a good fit?
Yeah. So I will preface this by saying I do absolutely love Debbie, and she's definitely staying as like a backup character. However, I did genuinely feel limited in trying to think and reason my way around why Debbie was doing what she was doing and who she was involving herself with. And it got to a point where I felt like I was just jumping through more hoops than was reasonable, given the character and the time frame I had to do the thinking. I just felt limited about what I could do, how far I could interact with certain elements of this setup of Detroit, and I just didn't know where to take her after the NOS thing ended. So I went back and visited the original idea I had before bringing Debbie in, and kind of tweaked it, and it ended up, I think it ended up working pretty well, all things considered.
Was that your question, Dengle?
Yes.
Segueing.
Well, close enough to it. Yeah, mine was what made you change, rather than the entire explanation. But yeah,
I think that's a good segue into Uriel. What was Uriel's inspiration?
Well, the original, I'm trying to remember what I had for the original. The very first, it kind of started, it actually started with my very, very, very first VTM character ever. I had joined a V20 play-by-post and had drawn up a Tremere who, while they could do all this cool extra stuff, they had no idea how to do like the basic blood sorcery, because their sire had been like hanging that over their head as like a you need to work up to this, you don't deserve it yet kind of a thing. And I thought that was an interesting premise, but the my time at the play-by-post kind of fell through. And so I went back. I was like, I really want to play a Tremere. So then I drafted up this first iteration, and I believe that first iteration had a boyfriend who was ghouled by Cat.
Yes.
Because the Tremere was actually embraced into the Sabbat, but didn't want any part of it, and so she went to Cat and said, "Hey, I'll turn traitor if you promise me protection." And Cat was like, "Yeah, but we need some assurance that you're not just going to turn on us." And one thing led to another, and that was that Tremere.
Yep.
But by the time it came around for me to start looking at other options, Rufus was already pretty in solidly with Cat, and we hadn't really touched on the pyramid yet, so I kind of shifted the focus away from that and swung around to Uriel.
Okay. Interesting character, I think, knowing what I know. Question for anyone else that isn't the question about D yet. I'll touch on that in a minute. Maybe.
Uriel's thoughts on the Coterie so far?
Uriel's not quite sure what to make of William yet.
I'm sorry, I just have to interrupt. I feel like that's what we say about every single one of Ben's characters every time this comes up.
Uriel's a relatively practical person, in that their first inclination is to see, is to be curious about people and see not just what it is that strikes their interest, but how they might potentially be useful in furthering their interests later on. Rufus is well connected. Lottie is trying to get well connected. They haven't seen William hit his stride with that yet. I'm sure that'll change and develop as William's character changes and develops. but they're aware that there's potential being a Tory, but they just haven't seen it yet.
And Lottie?
Lottie, they see a lot of potential in. They're a little bit wary of Lottie because they're very well aware of how Ventrue work on a practical level, but wanting to take over the information network and having that access to that close on hand would definitely benefit Uriel. And however, they do know that there are reasons that Lottie is interested in that, and if they're not careful, their secrets could very easily end up on that network as well. So they're kind of playing with fire with that one.
Okay. You're using that word a lot. Uriel sees the potential. What potential?
The potential to further their goals. And having a linchpin on the flow of information means that they'll be able to catch rumors about, I don't know, maybe the circulation of illicit objects or information that they can use to get leverage up on their fellow Tremere.
And what about
that.
Potential for William? Like, what is this potential that Uriel is seeing?
Other
than, I mean, there's Toreador stuff, but why would Uriel want to further that?
Fame, yeah, it's the fame angle. Fame carries weight. They know that. And that's weight that can be leveraged to get things.
Okay. We don't need a super long explanation. You just used that twice in a row. So I was curious what that meant to Uriel. And finally, Rufus.
Rufus is fascinating to Uriel. They don't particularly care about the Nodist angle. They're fascinated because in their mind they're seeing a cult literally grow from the ground up, and they're very, very interested in that kind of thing. The whole religious, spirituality, esoteric stuff, the influence that it can have over people, and how important it's been how important religion and spirituality has been in shaping life as it's. I mean, I as a player could just go on and on and on about that for hours, so I'm going to try and not get on that tangent, but just the idea of seeing this progress and watch it as it either grows and expands or collapses in on itself, and what might happen if it does.
Interesting. So Uriel hasn't interacted overly much with many of the clan leaders. Little bit with Valentina. More so with Charlotte. And I don't think Uriel has been involved at all with Kat. Or with Ellie. Or with Cassidy. So, obviously King. But starting with Valentina, obviously thoughts are going to be brief, but Uriel learned something very interesting. recently. So how has that impacted her thoughts? Like, what is her thoughts on Valentina now?
Uriel is extremely curious about Valentina. What their connection to this mythical figure really is, and how they managed to get so many pristine artifacts safely from Greece to America. They are very, very curious how she managed to pull that off.
Okay. And what about King and or Mike?
King and Mike have been I kind of imagine that relationship really started with Uriel's sire, using them as sources to get books when the Chantry would turn them away for being independent or whatever. And so that I feel like that kind of morphed into oh, well, your sire's dead now, but they were a good source of, hey, spoiler alert, their sire is dead. You will not be seeing them unless Faye has plans that I do not know about. Anyway, so I feel like that morphed into a hey, your sire was a good source of income for us. We'd like to continue this business partnership if you think it's feasible, and kind of went from there.
Okay. And then Charlotte and Deidre?
Deidre, I feel like it was one of those quasi-friendships where you're not quite sure how it happened. It's just like, oh, this person tolerates me and I appreciate that.
Okay. I guess she doesn't have too many direct links with Charlotte. It mostly has been Deidre being in the same clan, and Deidre was in the Chantry. She occasionally pops back in, but mostly her time is spent at Charlotte's. I have a question for Buttons, and you don't need to elaborate on stream if you don't want to. Do you understand the cobwebs? That feeling that Uriel had all night?
Yes. I understand, one, because I remember what we talked about, two, because I know enough to put 2 and 2 together to make 400, and on a I do get the like on a visceral level, I get the cobweb feeling. Like I can relate to it. So kind of yes to all of the above.
Okay. I just was, you looked really confused at first.
I was doing that in character.
Okay. I was wanting to make sure that's what it was, and Buttons understood what it was.
Buttons gets the cobwebs, yes.
Okay.
Buttons is excited for the cobwebs.
Is that something you want to elaborate on, or would you like to keep it tucked away for now?
Of course, Dengle had to walk away right now.
I'm sure he can still hear.
I know, but I wanted to see his reaction. Part of me wants to elaborate. Part of me wants to let things unfold naturally.
You do whatever you want.
Go on.
Oh, I'm so torn. I mean, let's start with this. Do you guys have guesses as to what's going on?
My initial thought was trapdoor, but I think there's something that's holding Uriel back.
Well, cobwebs would mean old things, which would mean potentially, like, I don't know. Like normally associated with like attics and closets and skeletons in the closet. Or we could go the completely other route that at least me, Faye, and Buttons enjoy, of a good other podcast. and that could have an influence on it, especially since there's already a mention of specifically an archivist.
And that's just the title I gave the records keeper of the Detroit Coterie.
Although he was grumpy enough to fit the bill.
I mean, he was, but no.
It was just
As much as I would absolutely love that crossover, we have other Eldritch things in our games.
Do so many. I will tell you above table that the cobwebs thing is directly correlated to the event of the strange person calling Uriel by another name.
So, borderline skeletons in the closet.
Borderline.
That's as far as I'm going to go with that one, because I have other ideas, but...
Any more questions?
So, Uriel says that they do restoration work. Is it like art restoration, or is it like book restoration?
Art restoration. I'm sure they've
Who is-
worked on a couple like old manuscripts, but it's mostly been like paintings.
Okay. Who is their favorite artist, then? If Buttons has thought about that far.
You know Buttons has. Knowing Uriel and how much they like their symbolism, probably Caravaggio.
That's fair.
They love the play of the light and the dark and the tenebrism and all that fun stuff that I learned way back in art school.
So, fun fact. Had an actual conversation been had with Dougie, I was going to have them be kind of an art nerd, art research, art archivist as well. For a reason. Because I thought you had said something about that before, but I was like, I don't remember if that's exactly what Button said, so I was like, I'm just going to go with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how much the ghouls were gonna happen in this game.
I just had a very general idea of what they'd been working on.
That's why I didn't even have you guys make sheets, because I didn't think it was going to be anything crazy.
I was gonna have them be working on a artist from early 1900s. That's it.
Any more for Uriel or any for me about the game?
Did you enjoy your La Sombra?
Yes.
Good.
That sucker had 3 levels in potence. And Cloak of Shadows.
Fun how that works. Fun how that works, isn't it?
Heck yeah.
I want to put on the record that this was absolutely a terrible night for Uriel. Normally, they would not be nearly that dumb to just book it after a stranger by themselves. However, as someone who experiences sensory overload and anxiety and all that fun stuff, I know how disorienting it can get. And so when you're on a one-track mind, you follow that track. I knew it was a terrible idea, but it was an in-character idea.
I very much want to point out, this is the very first time in our games that one of our characters has been influenced to the point of forgetting by a discipline. How'd you feel about that? I rolled 7 with a crit on that one. I think that's what I rolled.
Yeah, no. At first, I was like a little bit annoyed with it because, I mean, like, yeah, nobody wants to fail, nobody wants to forget something, but I think it works for the narrative better, and I think it draws out the mystery a little bit more, and I definitely think it had a little bit of a better influence on how Uriel responded afterwards. Because they wouldn't have gone downstairs if they recognized that person as ex-Sabat.
Yeah, it was very, very cool to be able to replay that introduction with the NPC knowing what they knew all of half an hour prior. I think I handled that as well as I could have with the gentle fading, and you didn't forget them completely and everything like that, but it's really interesting for a player character to go through something like that versus an NPC, which you just kind of hand wave. It's more visceral and real.
It really is.
You have to deal with that.
It really is. I have a question for Faye, if she will be willing to indulge me. What was the intruder hallucinating when he had his little breakdown?
Oh, are you sure you'd like to know?
Yes, actually, I do.
His embrace.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Being buried. And fighting his way out.
Very interesting.
He is a face character. He is not very physical, so it was really difficult. And kind of just happened because everyone wore themselves out. Skip's blood bond didn't happen because of... I'm blanking on the name of it. I want to say Vinaculum.
Vinculi?
Yeah, Vinculi.
It's not like I don't have a Sabat sheet right here.
Right. That's why I was... But yes, he had a pack bond, which supersedes all other bonds. So, that's why that didn't take. They were all Sabat, obviously. And Skip was not thrilled to be embraced by the Tremere.
What did Skip... No, Skip said he wanted to stay human. He didn't want any part of this, right?
Right. He worked in records and found out some things that he shouldn't have. And they were going to ghoul him, but then he kind of took to what they started to push to him really, really well. Like for studying and like research and things like that. And so they were just kind of like a fast track trial, just based on how unfortunate events played out. But he slipped away from them and found some Sabbat who promised to take down the tower. Or not the tower, I'm sorry. Take down the pyramid. To let him get revenge if he helped them get in. And most Tremere can't bond other Tremere, so there was nothing stopping him. But that's what was going on with Skip. Yeah. More questions?
For the storyteller, are the people who were trapped in the archives going to be a problem later?
It was actually Tremere and other ghouls and even other workers. Most of them are going to be fine. There was steel doors and they didn't really get off as much fire. The Sabbat really didn't get off as much fire as they wanted to. But there is going to be some damages in more ways than one. I'm going to have to explain to those firemen why some of those people kind of burned to ash real fast. And yeah, they could have their minds wiped, but then you also have to explain that.
That's the archives, though. It wouldn't make sense for there to be chemicals down in the archives. That would happen up in the labs.
And this isn't the typical archives. This is the Tremere archives. There's some not great things happening now that the mortals made their way into there because they had to. So that's some fallout to look forward to.
I will say this for the storyteller's sake. The one mortal from Uriel's herd that has been keeping them in the loop, if they were part of that, if they were put in danger by the pyramid, Uriel would volunteer to either like fully ghoul them themselves or even embrace them.
Okay, that's something we can touch upon in the upcoming games then. I'm sorry to cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna explain that they feel like they've proved their usefulness to Uriel by now by helping them with this. That they would feel comfortable taking them under their wing, full blown.
And that is something we can explore in the upcoming games. What were you going to say, Dengle?
Rufus ain't gonna like that.
What, the ghouling?
No. The, not being able to vet them before they get embraced.
Mm. They're not going to a full embrace, they're just getting it ghouled.
Yeah, that's fine. But if there's an embrace involved, you would like to vet them so you make sure it's not going to be an issue later on.
How much? Question for the storyteller. How much pull would Rufus have with the Chantry if the Chantry came to Uriel and said, "You need to deal with this, or we're going to deal with this"?
Deal with,
say worst case scenario, this favorite person from Uriel's herd needed to be full blown embraced.
okay.
And Rufus couldn't vet them before that happened.
Rufus
wouldn't have
has
any pull over
very
the
little
Chantry.
to no pull without Uriel and the Chantry. like, he might be able to apply a favor through Charlotte, depending on what he wants to sell, boon-wise, which would then go through Deidre, but it's not very strong.
So even if he did get mad about it, there's not much he could do either way.
No. Not on the pyramid level of things. To Uriel personally, well, that's up to you two.
Yeah, and he wouldn't care about the actual physical embrace. It's just he would want to like vet the person prior to Uriel doing it. Like, go ahead and do it if that's what you want to do, and if you're doing it responsibly, go for it. But he wants to make sure that his associate and himself are going to stay safe after the fact.
I will say I find it interesting that Rufus is that invested in Uriel, having only known them for a short period of time, comparatively.
And we'll find out why shortly.
I think I'm out of questions. I'll answer more about this game and, you know, the NPCs that appear tonight if you have questions for them. But I have no more for buttons.
I think I'm set.
I'm good to go.
Okay. So unless there's anything else you'd like to divulge, buttons.
Let's let the rest unfold as it may.
All right. So,
Even a few things.
thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It will be up eventually, I promise. I'm thinking about doing a compilation of all of them together. Because they're all relatively would be equal to a regular episode. So, that's my plan there. But thank you guys for joining us. Stick with us, and more games will come out. Mostly on time, we promise. As best as we are able to.
As the internet gods are willing.
Yes. So, thank you for joining us. Have a good day, and farewell.
So do you want to do above table guesses on who everyone's clan was?
What?
Well, let's see here. We got Motor was Toreador.
Yep, totally.
Um,
Got me.
Jim was Banu Hakim, and Naya was Salubri. Yeah,
Yeah, you totally got me. I made another salubri.
yeah. No, Nas. I assume Bruja, and then Naya, maybe Toreador. That one I don't 100% know.
You want me to tell you?
Sure.
She's Kadif.
Oh, nice.
Sired by a Bruja, so she's got the Bruja Vitae in her. So she's got Bruja skills right now. And Bruja influence. But yeah, she's Kadif.
So I was right about the Bruja thing, sort of, but wrong person. And then Jim. Ellie took Jim, so that would lead toward Malkavian. If it's specifically with that, but I doubt that.
Nope.
And I don't believe it'd be a Gangrel, so.
Nope. Zemitzi.
That's fair.
It isn't that scary. The Malkavian got the Zmitzi.
Oh, it's fine.
Malkavian with dementation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but only Malkavians can keep dementation. Or the D.
Right, there's other reasons why that might be worrisome.
Now there's physical issues as well.
Fine. Obviously, Kat didn't know that, or she would have definitely taken him.
And then there was the thin blood.
Yes. Cassidy's thin blood.
Yeah.
Also, real fast, did any of you... None of you were actually watching or had the stream pulled up, did you?
Yeah, I pulled up.
I did.
Did
Yep.
you notice the change?
Yes.
How fun, right? Cassidy's symbol turned into the Sabat Bruja symbol.
Yep.
I had that ready to go since the first time I started creating the overlay.
Nice, very nice, very nice.
It's like I was shared with the overlay, so I kind of already knew that was going to happen. But it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's okay.
Yeah. Ellie's has one too, but I wasn't going to change that until the in-game stuff happened. Hee hee.
Here, and we have done all of the solo games.
Yes. Did I miss any questions while I was away? Okay.
I don't see any.
What? I meant with you guys. I didn't have my earbuds in.
No.
Did you enjoy your game, Dengle?
That is not what I expected it to go with, but that works. Making Rufus sit here and like be super paranoid the
He could
entire
have
time.
left. He was not forced to stay. It was truly just an offer if he wanted to be there.
And he wanted to be there until it was like, all right, cool, they're probably not going to come here. Let's go take care of my other shit.
Mhm.
And that's why he had everybody and their mother tracking his other thing.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun for me.
Now, next question is, who is using heightened senses to overhear the conversation?
Who knows?
How much does Rufus care? He doesn't at all.
Should have looked for squirrels, man.
Well, you
Oh, he
had
doesn't care.
a couple plans that could have used it there.
Tremere, Toreador. Gotta have that. Could be wrong there.
No, I don't believe Hakata
Not a-
do. But
Not
Malkavians do
a plan.
too.
Is she still around?
Mm-hmm. She was there up until the very end.
Didn't say a specific name.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He would also be
So-
cognizant of
What?
people being around, so be as quiet as he can.
So I guess we'll start the deep dive. What was
Yep.
the inspiration behind Rufus?
I knew I wanted to be a Ravnos because I like to cause problems for myself. Radically having to cause problems for myself is fun. So therefore, that's why I picked the Ravnos part, and I was like, what can make a fun idea for a Ravnos? And I kind of ran through a bunch of the things of, well, fortune teller, and I was like, no, that's kind of overdone. Truck driver, kind of overdone. And I was like, what about like a snake oil salesman? And then it kind of like spiraled into this. What about an old preacher that specifically just deals with people that are like down and out because Ravnos
Interesting.
As far as how I got to his particular style of preaching, being said preacher, I didn't have a specific inspiration. I just figured if he was going to do it, make it be focused on keeping the humane, and keeping those that aren't.
Anyone else want to ask a question?
Is Rufus a pastor or a preacher as a human?
Not at all.
What did he do as a human?
Carpet sales.
Not what I was
Surprise.
expecting, but it works. I can see it. I have 1,001 questions, so I'm like leaving space for other people to ask questions. Otherwise, I'm just gonna like.
Yeah, did Nen and
Oh,
Cocia
go.
have a question?
Nothing that's popping into my head right now. I forgot all the ones that I did have previously.
I'll let Buttons go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Buns, if you have some questions.
Was Rufus as big a nodist as he is now before quote unquote Hell Week? Or like the night of whatever it was. I'm forgetting the word for it.
The Week of
The
Nightmares.
Week of Nightmares.
Week of Nightmares. Right.
So, yes and no. He got his first taste quite a while ago, which kind of turned into he did some research on it, and then it kind of spiraled into, hey, this is potentially something that I can bring people together on.
Do you have an actual count of how many pages Rufus has, or are you just hand waving it?
I believe we have a specific count. I think it's like 5 now, right?
Something like that. We know the specific pages, too.
Yes. And then he also, the one that he saw initially, I have that marked as well, and he took very good notes on it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will potentially actually tell you which ones they are.
Up
If
to
you
you
wanna
if you up to you if you want to discuss that.
The pages on the Malkavian and the Nos clans, the Time of the Thin Bloods, which is from Tori,
Yes.
and
Surprise.
then he saw, does not have, but saw, the creation of the first vampire pages, which really started the whole like, hey, that's a cool story.
Why the Malkavian and the Nos pages? I mean, just like from an above the table standpoint.
I opened the book to a random page and I was like, these are what you have. That's actually what was purchased at the auction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Think of me what was stolen after the auction.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was entirely, I opened the book to a random page and that was what it was. I figured that was the best way to do that.
So would those specific pages hold any emotional context for Rufus then? Or are they just pages to have?
As it sits right now, the Thin Blood one a little bit, but the other one that he just has the notes on, that one more so than anything. Which, if you've listened, like actually listened to some of the sermons, quote unquote, that I've put together for him, I've alluded to some of that. I didn't want to make it like super intensive of, oh, that's from this page and that paragraph and blah, blah, blah. But I did want to allude to that.
Speaking of alluding to things and using sermons, when the coterie went to see Rufus speak and he gave the sermon about loving and forgiving yourself, it seemed like he was speaking from a very personal place there. Does he have some regrets that the creator would be willing to share with us?
He without giving specifics, he was responsible for a very unfortunate event that it kind of still haunts him today, which kind of sent him down the path that he's on. Because without that specific event, other things wouldn't have happened to put him in certain places to get him to certain places, which got him to where he is now. So yes, there's more than one event and one thing that has happened that he has deep regrets on.
And does Rufus, like Tori, regret being in the group that they're in?
Most of the time, no.
I guess we're not as bad. This group isn't quite as bad as Tori's group. Poor Tori.
So the only times that he would, quote unquote, regret the group that he's in is when, like, he's trying to do one thing and people don't pick up on it, and then they go a different route and it kind of alters what he has to do. Like the whole thing with Peter.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like that one time where Lottie.
Yeah. Then he was like, well, I guess we're doing that now. And he had to switch gears a little bit. Or when William has his fixations, it's like, God, another damn Toreador. What the hell? Couldn't be normal and just keep moving and just like want to rule over everything. He wouldn't have regretted if Debbie would have stayed, and doesn't really have an issue with Yuri. He doesn't fully trust Tremere, but most people don't, so it's fine.
So I know Buttons probably has more, but I think this is a good segue into getting on Rufus's thoughts into the coterie themselves.
I'll start with Buttons' characters. Debbie wasn't necessarily like, I'm going to spend every waking moment with her, but it was she is level-headed, she's useful, she's not bad, honestly, especially for Gangrel. So I wouldn't necessarily say liked her, but definitely would tolerate her long-term. I wouldn't necessarily say he likes anybody. Lottie, he sees as a very good resource for a lot of things. Opens a lot of doors for him because of her clan. Again, tolerates her probably more than he should, because she does have the cam tie, and he's very anti-cam. Does have a couple things that are concerning to him, like the attachment to Willow, which he understands. It's concerning. The attachment to Terrence, which is just concerning. He tolerates her, and he's not going to do anything to get rid of her. William is a bit of a thorn in the side sometimes, just because William's kind of dumb, but it's okay. When given direction, William is useful, and he's valuable to a certain extent. So we will keep him around as long as he doesn't do anything to jeopardize anything on Rufus's end. He would like to vet people more than what William is potentially doing currently, but it's fine. If Chris likes them and he somewhat trusts Chris to not be the complete idiot. A complete idiot. He's an idiot, but he's not a complete idiot.
Oh, so you think?
He'll trust William to not just be like, oh, by the way, I'm this. And give out a bunch of information to people that Chris is trying to put him in contact with. William can stay. He starts to lose usefulness. He might just be like, hey, I'm going to call you next time I need something. And then just never call him again. And then circling back to Yuri. Doesn't necessarily trust Yuri because Tremere finds Yuri is extremely intriguing because definitely not a typical Tremere. I mean, there's still the here and there weirdness and the I don't understand you, but fine parts of the Tremere, but doesn't have the air of I'm better than you, even though they're not. Doesn't have the there is a curiosity there, which is typical, but it's not as invasive as a lot of them. It almost looks more like a Nosferatu to him as far as the curious aspect rather than I have to know everything and it has to fall in line with like logic. Yuri just takes it a lot more face value of okay, that's a thing.
Any questions regarding the coterie from you guys? Or like the group in general or anything like that? Non-NPCs.
I got nothing.
It looks like she's thinking hard.
You know me.
If not, we can move on to NPCs.
Yeah, I think we're gonna move on to NPCs. Yeah. Wait, no. How did Rufus and Tori first meet?
I believe we have talked about it, and it was basically Tori was on her countrywide road trip and just happened to stop in Detroit and be like, oh, this is still Sabat, and was leaving and at Rufus.
Yes. Yeah, there is a reason Tori would have gone to Detroit that you guys don't know yet. but she definitely would have stopped in on her road trip because she spent, what was it, 4 or 5 years just traveling as an independent.
Speaking of traveling, why does Rufus stay in Detroit?
That I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
There is absolutely reasons, and Faye knows those reasons. And right now, until he either dies or we end this and I make a new character, I'm not going to tell you. Or unless it comes out in game.
Hey.
We'll see
What
if it
I'm
will.
hearing is I have to stay very, very close to Detroit because of a tie.
Kind of.
To the church that Katarzyna said was important to him.
That has something to do with it, yes.
Fun times for Rufus ahead, I think.
Sure.
So, I would like to know Rufus's thoughts on NPCs. If you have a preferred order, that's fine.
Well, let's start with the stuff that I've got over here. So let's start with Kat because Kat's his main contact, obviously. She is probably the only person that Rufus is legitimately scared of. Shows her respect not just because of the whole generational thing, and that obviously that's big for him, but also like if I don't do this, A, she's an old Zemitsu, she might just fucking eat me. B, it's 30, 40 of them, give or take, of her brood versus him.
No, nowhere near.
Like 15, 20 then? I know it's not huge, but I don't remember exactly how big it is.
No, I think there was
But
like
still.
12.
Okay. So let's call it 15 just to...
Yeah. It was somewhere around there. It wasn't 20.
But call it 15 versus 1. That's not going to end well. And Rufus knows that because at the end of the day, he is just Ravnos. Ravnos aren't necessarily the greatest at fighting. They have that really cool, sparkles thing, but that's about all he's got.
Good luck doing out at a mass level.
I've got the Fata Morgana that can do that. And that's why I have it. But he's not going to outrun all of them. He knows that. And he doesn't necessarily know what Vincent is, but he knows he creeps him the hell out. So, like, let's not mess with him. For all he knows, he's a first Inquisition fighter that has made it this far. Not obviously, but yeah. And then moving on, Cassidy. I think we all know how he feels about Cassidy at this point.
Real fast. Divergence real fast here. Were you guys surprised at all about Cassidy?
Not overly so.
Good.
You kind of alluded to it a lot.
Okay. Continue, I'm sorry.
Going on to the next person would be King. I'm going in a circle on the map.
Sure.
He actually likes King. He understands where King is coming from. He understands why King doesn't really want to deal with everybody. However, he's very annoyed at King because he needed to. frustrated with King. Which is why the times he has used it as a, hey, can you do this for me? It was very, very dire to him. He's not just going to go to him like, hey, can you look at or find information on a knife or a book? It's, hey, somebody I care about might die. Can you look into it? Or, hey, this is a very big issue that multiple people are looking into. Can you take a look into it? If you find something, let me know. Going to Valentina. Frankly, he doesn't really like Valentina. But he understands that he has to at least be respectful and decent to her to have some sort of working relationship. Looking to be best friends. He's barely looking to be business partners at this point. He just knows she has money, I need money. We both can benefit off this. Maybe. That is as far as his personal feelings go to her. If she asks for help, yeah, sure. I guess. But sees that she needs help, isn't going to volunteer it unless asked. Moving on to Ellie.
Mhm.
Like I said, he's very anti-cam. He hasn't dealt with her extensively and goes off of reputation primarily, not exclusively, but primarily. And does not trust her to not attempt to do things that would be detrimental to his health. Doesn't think that she's going to be outright hostile, but not trust her enough to not do something to him.
Fair.
Then finally Charlotte, because we're going to skip over the Chantry for right now, because he hasn't dealt with him that much.
Right.
So he doesn't really have an opinion on the Chantry in Detroit. Tremere in general, yes, but not, yeah. So Charlotte. Personality-wise, he probably will never be overly close with her personality-wise. However, he has interest in her otherwise for other reasons. Beyond just she's Toreador, she can do a lot of stuff that I want to learn how to do. The blood doll aspect, there's that, which he fully respects and actually I wouldn't necessarily say envies because he doesn't want that, but having access to that as easily as she does is very, 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 very useful.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So he actively works and will be actively working on staying on her good side to be allowed to do in a pinch needed get into that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Might look to make a request eventually to be able to add a certain substance to help him out a little bit. But that is here nor there.
Interesting. I know he hasn't had too many interactions with Leon.
So I was actually talking to Feyla about this a little bit earlier. He is wary of Leon for how bold Leon is. Not scared of. He's not intimidated by, but he's like, A, that's a Cappadocian. B, lives in the main mausoleum. Very large. Kind of bold. To just like, this is where I'm at. Come find me. Worries him slightly, but he survived this long, so he's got to at least have some sort of defenses or fail-safes for that. Leon's one of those, I'm not going to mess with him, but I'm also not going to mess with them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Just wary enough to give a birth.
Yes.
Any other NPCs of note that Rufus is interested in or has deep thoughts about?
So I think it's pretty obvious at this point he likes the Thin Bloods, and I think he's said why a couple different times.
If not straight out, then definitely alluded to.
The fact that they're both kind of seen as bad for different reasons, obviously. So he doesn't necessarily feel kinship to them, but he gets their plight, their issues that they have to deal with. And here, most of Cat's brood that we've dealt with, like Borea and Varia, he feels closer to than most people in the city. Again, probably because he's dealt with them more than pretty much everybody else in the city. So he doesn't necessarily fully trust Sylvie. That's partly because of ministry.
Right.
And she's nosy.
Okay, she is.
Trust her, but will trust her enough to handle certain things. And her coterie, he assumes that they're all under her thumb, so.
Did you have more questions? Anyone else?
I have one that just popped in my head. How often does Rufus have to replace his van with all the constant driving?
It's probably, he does take care of it. He specifically buys things that he can work on himself. So he would probably keep him 7 or 8 years as long as the frame's not completely rotted. And then he would basically scrap it and start over. Again, with something in good enough condition that he can work on.
How many little hidey holes does he have in the van?
More
Not
than we
looking
can
for
cover.
him, but
More than we can cover here.
Buttons, did you have more?
If I did, they have escaped me.
Let's see. Can't think of any that we didn't ask that we asked everybody else. That I can think of. Is there anything you want to share about Rufus that you haven't already?
So, we've obviously covered that he is a collar. He's given out a couple IDs, which I don't think we covered whether or not he got Beth's message. And
no, I did mean to, but things kind of went a little bit faster and other things popped up in between. So we can kind of just cover it now, and he just answered it during some of his downtime.
Which, we'll just say it was the night that Tori's leaving. We will get to that eventually. So he has given out quite a few, and he's been doing it for a very, very long time. The one that he gave Shiloh was, if it wasn't Tori and it wasn't that, he wouldn't have given it to her. Let's put it that way. Arguably, that is his most bulletproof identification he's ever given out. Shiloh is set.
Some pages will buy you a lot.
Oh, yes. Anything else that I'd like to share? I believe on his backstory that I shared with Faye, I've said that he's been literally the entire ring of the U.S., hitting mostly Sabbat cities, oddly.
Yeah, why?
He is not Sabbat himself.
He is just Sabbat and just faking it really good that he's not.
No, he's not.
I just think.
He knows of certain people that Faye found interesting. Like, he knows of, actually personally knew, Cyril's sire.
Yeah.
Knows of somebody else that may or may not be eventually showing up in Atlanta.
Yep.
So, be ready for that one. See if you can figure out who it is. And has somebody else that he knows that probably no longer has contact with anybody through the old means. Knows them. And they're a problem. Specifically for Charlotte.
Yep. And Faye got real interested in that one, so at some point, maybe.
But yeah, so a couple things about Rufus is he's not as, well, obviously he's not as cut and dry as he might seem, but he got some stuff. That's all I got.
Is there questions that you guys had for me about the game or about the previous 4 games, how things are working, anything like that? I'm not going to do super deep onto NPCs, but I'll answer some questions.
I did have a question that I totally meant to ask during Yuri's deep dive, but I just completely and totally spaced for some reason. You've talked a little bit about Valentina's views on gender.
Mhm.
What did she think of Yuri?
So Uriel
I-
never specifically stated to her that they are they. And in her eyes, I think that Uriel is non-typical masculine enough to fall into that the more feminine category. Like, no offense meant or anything like that. Feminine is just the more female aspect of it. But I think Uriel falls in that regards to them. To her and her group.
What did she think about Uriel asking about the collection?
The questions asked put her on a little bit higher guard. Because Uriel obviously knows something. Or at least in her mind, obviously knows something. And so Uriel's one to watch now.
Welcome to the club.
As well as because of what Lottie asked.
several months later, and Valentina's watching her. They're just a really big fucking nerd.
Yes, that is the roles that happen. However, Valentina doesn't know that, and there's reasons why Valentina wouldn't particularly put two and two together. It's fine.
It's fun to watch the powers that be squirm just a little bit.
Yeah, that's as much as I want to delve with that for Valentina.
How swamped was King and Mike during that entire thing?
So being that at that point in time, there is only King and Mike has very limited technical skills. He's much more a ground pounder than King. King was real busy. like had he not felt like he owes Rufus some favors, probably wouldn't have answered the phone or done it without giving more pushback.
Since King seems to be a man that enjoys his privacy and his peace and quiet, how fast is he going to get annoyed at Motor? How fast is Motor going to get bonded?
Ooh, so here's the thing. King is 12th generation. Blood potency 1. He currently has Tiller bound to him. So unless he wants to have that loose cannon out there, he won't.
Okay. So how fast is Motor gonna get transported to Lottie's place?
It depends. I might do some rolls. There's also the option of Mike bonding Motor. Yeah. We'll see.
What time?
We'll see.
Better shut up. What? I have to shut up now? What do you mean shut up? Shut up?
It is at least not going to be immediately. I have plans for when things move farther along for you guys, though. So that helped with this.
These kindred will probably show up again, just not from you guys playing them.
Oh yeah, do you want the sheets that we came up with if we came up with sheets, or are you just gonna do
Eventually.
them off? Okay.
I'm gonna make like
Yeah, I got a
small.
rough-
I'll make small sheets for them, just like I will be doing for other kindred that just pop up randomly.
How much did you expect Rufus to be like, I want that one?
Somewhat, but I also felt like if you were going to do that, it would not have been at that point in time.
If it was like him and Leon and Charlotte, maybe. All
I
right, cool. Which one do you guys want?
personally, I think it's more likely that Rufus will approach someone individually and in their own domain and barter for something if he really wants one of them.
Yeah. If he figures out who's what's where, what's why, things will be talked about.
There's ways that he could do that, but it depends on what he wants to do and how he goes about doing it.
Well, he has a NOS friend.
He does.
That isn't Mike King or Motor.
Mm-hmm. Who has a family.
Hey, bud. Here's $50. Go spy on these people.
Yep, and above table, that's pretty much all it'd take for him. He doesn't give two shits. There's a reason I gave you guys a NOS.
And a gangrel with a cat.
No, the NOS has the cat. Yeah. Nope. It's
That's
the
even
NOS.
better.
I know. Yes, the Nosferatu has the bound cat.
Fun times.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, go spy on this person. Where are they? The hospital.
Yep. That'll be interesting to see what happens, I think.
Yeah.
You know, funnily enough, there we go, that's close enough. I actually gave Motor the Familius one, the Bound Familius. That would be funny.
Nice.
They can have a trash panda, right?
Yeah. They'll get that eventually. Just remind me later.
Or a skunk, that'd also be funny.
Any other questions from you guys?
Yeah, Phil, why are you guys shaking your heads?
I don't have any other questions.
Oh, what's that?
Okay. Then we will end this session. Thank you for joining us, guys. Have a good night.